the issue of job creation is a complex one. And there needs to be the government setting up the basic institutions, the basic labor market institutions, the basic social services, social infrastructure, economic infrastructure, and that is the role of the government. So we need to facilitate the development of economic activities, farm and non-farm economic activities in rural areas. And then there is, of course, also the role of local communities. And that is a more and more dynamic role that they are playing. And actually, this issue of bottom-up approach, where you have the local interests getting organized, okay, and developing a voice. And with this voice, developing economic activities and trying to reach the policy level. I think this is the model that we are seeing increasingly. And at some point, the government will have to listen to those voices. The government now is really listening to the urban voices more than to the rural voices, because they're closer, because they're stronger, because they are more vocal. And so what we're seeing now is that the local communities, local rural communities, are getting increasingly stronger by getting together, by getting all the stakeholders of rural communities together, including groups like women or even indigenous populations, getting them around the table, getting them to have a voice and then reach the policy level. So now the matter is for national level to listen to those voices and translate them into answers to the needs of those communities, to unlock the potential for development and for transformation. So basically, there should be basic services provided by the national policymakers, but there now is increasingly a bottom-up approach to communities that are taking it into their hands and that are themselves developing solutions, associations of producers and so forth, and pushing the government. So basically, there should be basic services provided by the national policymakers, but there now is increasingly a bottom-up approach to communities that are taking it into their hands and that are themselves developing solutions, associations of producers and so forth, and pushing the government into responding to their needs. So that's the hope for the near future. This link between national and bottom-up. They need to meet and advance. Well, actually, investing in rural areas is good business. First of all, we're talking about investors, you're talking about you already have investors in rural areas. That is the first issue that we need to take into account. And they have ideas, and we have seen that there is no lack of ideas. Here we had this setting up of ICT enterprise. Ideas for activities are not in short supply in rural areas. Okay? And in rural areas, you also have a good deal of human resources. They are resources that are now underemployed. So you have more underemployed resources in rural areas than in urban areas. You also have the potential of having the crops, and now they are not sufficiently transformed into industrial products, for example. So you have, as I was mentioning, something like 1/3 of crops rotting because they cannot be processed. So you have raw materials in rural areas. They are there. They are available. Nowadays, you also have the capacity to develop solar energy. So here, for example, the bottlenecks constituted by the lack of energy in rural areas has a solution, and has a solution that can be developed in rural areas. In rural areas, they also have more space. Urban areas are crowded. In rural areas, you could also have better living conditions. You have more space, and there is a tendency for enterprises to think now about rural areas. It started in developed countries. It started. Now rural is nearly fashionable. It really is good business, and businesses are interested in investing and moving to rural areas. Okay? And I think that this could be happening quite soon in developing countries as well. So it is good business.